We are 2 months away from the release of Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. I've had the opportunity to play the demo a lot and have become pretty accustomed to the game, but there was one thing I wasn't able to get used to: the standard controls. The standard controls are a completely new control scheme that has never been in the Tenkaichi series before, but after looking at my footage and reviewing the standard controls one last time, I noticed something. The standard controls are the Raging Blast controls. Apart from a few differences, the control scheme lines up perfectly. So in this video, I'm gonna show you guys how to get accustomed to the standard and the classic controls before the release of Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. Here we are in Dragon Ball Raging Blast 2. Now, you guys can see the controls for the game on the screen right now, but just pointing it out for everyone, melee is set to square, Ki Blast and smash attacks are set to triangle, your signature skills are set to circle, dashing is set to X, jumping and ascending is set to L1, descending is set to L2, defense is set to R1, and switching and transforming are set to R2. But if you look at the standard controls for Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, you'll see that apart from 3 specific controls, the control scheme is the exact same as it is in the Raging Blast series. So the difference in controls are your signature skills, which are set to circle, would be your perception in Sparking Zero. And in the Raging Blast series, your key charge is set to down on the D-pad. But for standard controls in Sparking Zero, it's set to R2. And then of course you have switching and transforming, which in the Raging Blast series is set to R2, but in Sparking Zero for the standard controls, those controls are set to left and up on the D-pad respectively. So if you just swap those controls around, the control scheme is pretty much the exact same as the Raging Blast series. So if you really do want to get accustomed to the standard controls for Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, then play the Raging Blast series. Now there is one thing that I do want to point out. So again, we're still in Dragon Ball Raging Blast 2, and I stand by saying that if you do want to learn the standard controls, then Raging Blast, like the series as a whole, would probably be your best bet, because apart from those specific controls I mentioned earlier, the control scheme is the exact same. And the thing is, even though the control scheme is relatively the same, there are still differences between Raging Blast and the Tenkaichi series, because remember, Raging Blast is a spiritual successor to Tenkaichi. It is not in and of itself Tenkaichi. So there are some things that do transfer over from Tenkaichi into Raging Blast. Like, for example, you have your basic light string, right? You're able to use things like Flying Kick. You can use Ki Cannon, the whole jumping to Ki Blast and then following up with like attack falling down. Like, there are some things that are in this game that are in the Tenkaichi series and that are also in Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. But when it comes down to like learning like genuine combos, that's when you start having a difference. Because in the Raging Blast series, in order to string combos together, you have to like land your string first, and then afterwards you kind of press either triangle or circle respectively. You also have like, for example, in-game cancels, just like that. Lots of things like that are not in the Tenkaichi series. And I'm speaking just generally, right? So again, the controls for the most part you can get accustomed to, right? For standard anyway, with the Raging Blast series. Again, you got jumping, you got descending. If you press circle in Raging Blast, that's your signature skill. In Sparking Zero, that would be your perception. But for the most part, everything is the same, like even guarding. So again, if you do want to get accustomed to the standard controls, then Raging Blast is gonna be your best bet for sure. But let's say that you just can't get used to the standard controls, and you really do want to use the control scheme from Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3. Well, luckily, in Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, if you select the classic controls, it takes the exact control scheme from Tenkaichi 3 and directly translates it to Sparking Zero. So you can see on the screen right now, we're in Tenkaichi 3. You can see Key Charge is set to L2, Blaster Wave set to L1, Ki Blast set to Triangle, Fight set to Square, Descend set to R2, Ascend set to R1, Guard set to Circle, and Dash set to X. And if you look at the classic control scheme for Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, the controls are literally the exact same. I mean, apart from like small tweaks, like for example, in Sparking Zero, we have the short dash because regular dashing is not in that game, right? And also in Tenkaichi 3, you have Blaster Wave, but in Sparking Zero, you have the revenge counter set to that button, but it pretty much functions the exact same. So again, if you are really just accustomed to the Tenkaichi 3 controls, then classic controls for Sparking Zero are the way to go. And the best part is, if you really do want to learn combos for Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, then Tenkaichi 3 is the best game to play, because a lot of combos from Tenkaichi 3, as well as extensions and whatnot, directly translate in Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. So here we are in Tenkaichi 3, and I'm using, Goku, but again, like if you want to use Flying Kick, if you want to use Heavy Finish, if you want to use Ki Cannon, like those are in the game. Again, the Jumping Ki Blast, like that's also in the game. Lift Strike, you can still do that. Like even this, which is Air Combo 1, although I messed up near the end, all of that is in Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, alongside just general controls of like, you know, dashing. But remember, in Sparking Zero, it's the short dash. So dashing like this infinitely is not a thing anymore, right? But also, again, you got your Ki Blast, you know, you can block. Ascension, Descension, like all that is still the same. And even Ki Charge set to the exact same button. So again, if you really do want to get like the truest form of practice for Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, then I highly recommend playing Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3, especially if you're planning on using the classic controls. But if you really do want to use the standard controls, then get some experience with Raging Blast, because that's the control scheme you're going to be rocking with, so you want to practice with that game a little bit. But again, when it comes down to combos, classic controls, all that good stuff, then Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3 is going to be your best bet. There is one thing that I do want to note, and it's that in the Raging Blast series, and even in the Tenkaichi series, you are able to remap your controls, or at least up to a certain extent. So we're going to be using Tenkaichi 3 as an example in this particular case, but in Tenkaichi 3, I know for sure that you are able to adjust your face buttons. I don't believe you're able to change the shoulder buttons, but the face buttons you can absolutely change. So you can see we're on the controller scheme layout right now. If we go to 1P and swap over to custom, and then we press X, and then we hold on X, depending on which face button we want to adjust, we're able to change it. So we're going to be using triangle as an example, but triangle is normally set to Ki Blast, but I could set it to fight, I could set it to dashing, I could set it to guard, or just keep it at Ki Blast. And again, that goes for any face button that is available. So again, we don't know if Dragon Ball Sparking Zero is going to allow you to do this specific thing, but if it does, then you'll be able to fine-tune your controls even more in that game, depending on whether or not you want to use standard or classic controls. But that's pretty much it. This video was made primarily for those who are going to be new players to the Tenkaichi series, where they're planning on picking up Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, but they've never played a Tenkaichi game before in the past. So again, if you do want to get accustomed to the standard controls in Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, then playing either Dragon Ball Raging Blast 1 or 2 would be your best bet to get accustomed to those controls. And if you do want to use the classic controls in Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, then playing Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3 would be your best bet, on top of learning how combos would actually function in Dragon Ball Sparking Zero as well. I really do hope that this video helped you guys out, even if a little bit. But I do want to know in the comment section below, are you guys planning on using the standard controls or the classic controls for Dragon Ball Sparking Zero? But with that being said, I've been Ndukauba, like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.